Matt Hancock on the defensive. He denies ignoring COVID testing advice for care homes. The former Health Secretary has disputed allegations after 100,000 lockdown WhatsApp messages were leaked. More pain for the families of those who've lost loved ones.
Matt Hancock went out of his way to ignore the scientists' advice and then to have the gall or the audacity to actually say that we will put a ring of care around the care homes.
Also tonight, the latest on the major search effort for a missing newborn baby in Sussex. As ambulance staff prepare to strike on Monday, one union warns it will respond to only the most immediately life-threatening calls. And in need of some TLC, the 700-year-old chair making centre stage at the King's Coronation.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. An explosive trove of text messages has given fresh insight into Matt Hancock's early handling of the pandemic. Leaked WhatsApp conversations suggest the then Health Secretary overruled expert advice about COVID testing. But today, Mr Hancock strenuously denied that. He said he'd been told it was not possible to test everyone going into a care home. Our political correspondent Romilly Weeks reports.
Their messages never destined for public view. Tens of thousands of leaked WhatsApps to and from the then Health Secretary at the height of the COVID pandemic that had left Matt Hancock facing renewed accusations he didn't do enough to protect care homes.
From the start, we've worked incredibly hard to throw that protective ring around our care homes.
That was Matt Hancock's assertion in May 2020. But in these messages leaked to the Daily Telegraph, he appears to overrule advice from scientists to test everyone going into care homes, writing to an advisor on 14th of April. Chris Whitty has done an evidence review and now recommends testing of all going into care homes. This is obviously a good, positive step. After a meeting about testing capacity, his advisor replies, "I wasn't in testing meeting, just to check. Officials are saying your steer is to remove the commitment to testing on admission to care homes from the community, but keep commitment to testing on admission to care homes from hospital. Is that right?" Matt Hancock replies, "I would rather leave it out and just commit to test and isolate all going into care from hospital. I do not think the community commitment adds anything and it muddies the waters." That was April, and it was mid-August before those entering care homes from the community were tested. For the bereaved like Daniel Kirstein, whose father died from COVID, this is hard to accept.
Matt Hancock went out of his way to ignore the scientists' advice and then to have the gall or the audacity to actually say that we will put a ring of care around the care homes. And that he actually said that. Well, where was this ring of care?
Today, the social care minister, who was also in post at the time, said this.
The importance of testing was never in doubt. But in a situation where we had the capacity to test at most a few thousand each day, tough decisions about prioritisation had to be made.
A spokesman for Mr Hancock added, "These stolen messages have been doctored to create a false story that Matt rejected clinical advice on care home testing. This is flat wrong." The exchanges only came to light after they were leaked by the journalist Isabel Oakeshott, with whom Mr Hancock was writing a book on the pandemic.
And that ends today's coronavirus daily briefing.
Waiting for the COVID inquiry to conclude before rushing out his personal account might have served him and the bereaved rather better. While the chair of that inquiry, Baroness Hallett, has said that she won't let it drag on and that she will publish conclusions, including interim ones, as soon as possible. There are more revelations coming from this huge cache of messages. Uncomfortable for Mr Hancock and painful for the families who are craving and yet to get the full picture. All right, Romilly in Westminster, thank you.
Well, from claims about the former health secretary to the staffing crisis facing the current one, ITV News can reveal thousands of ambulance workers are stepping up their strike action next week with a move the government tells us could risk lives. Our Deputy Political Editor, Anushka Astana, has the details and reaction.
Nikita Ottu has epilepsy, which can mean up to 30 seizures a day.
It affects me every hour of every day.
She depends on her local ambulance service.
When I'm really ill, they are the difference between life and death for me.
And so Nikita doesn't go out or take risks like having a shower on strike days.
It's made me feel really vulnerable, and far more vulnerable than I would usually. When they announced the strikes, I was completely in support of them, and I continue to be, but as someone that relies on them, it's scary.
But ambulance strikes are still rolling on, and now ITV News can reveal that the GMB union is escalating its action next week, urging members to respond to Category 1 calls for life-threatening incidents like cardiac arrests and serious allergic reactions, but in many cases not to Category 2 calls for emergency incidents, which can include strokes, heart attacks and some seizures.
Why are you doing it?
Because what we actually saw was when the nurses chose to escalate their industrial action by extending it to more of the workforce, more of the emergency care, the intensive care and the cancer care, when they were due to be coming out in industrial action, the government came to the table.
If you're honest with our viewers, there are some serious conditions in Category 2 that might not get a response.
They might not be responded to on Monday, but they also might not be responded to any other day of the week, whether we're on strike or not.
Tonight, the government has described the GMB's decision as a significant escalation that could risk lives. But this paramedic says that risk is there every day.
We cannot carry on the way we are. The patients cannot carry on the way they are. And the ambulance service is at breaking point.
Ministers say they will talk to unions like the GMB if the strikes are paused. But the unions say they'll only do that with an offer to discuss. Anushka Astana, ITV News.
To Greece now, where at least 38 people have died in a high-speed head-on train crash. It happened late last night. Survivors describe clambering to safety through burning carriages. Today, a Greek railway official has been arrested. The Transport Minister has resigned. Our correspondent John Ray has more.
The smouldering and twisted remains of a busy passenger train. On board, many students returning from a holiday. Journeys that ended in this horrific head-on collision in the dead of night. Some were killed as they slept. Emergency services searched the wreckage for those still trapped. From the moment of impact, survivors described 10 terrifying seconds of chaos and then frantic minutes stuck in broken and burning carriages. It was a nightmare, says this man, among scores of walking wounded. People were in a state of panic. Even though rescuers arrived quickly, we didn't know how to get out, which way to turn. 2 carriages were completely destroyed. The force of the crash between a freight train and a passenger service travelling at speed left another lying at right angles to the track. Around 350 passengers were on board. Those who escaped with their lives are now grieving for friends who did not. Dozens are in hospital, some seriously injured. Police have arrested and charged with manslaughter a local station master in charge of signalling. He has denied any wrongdoing. There will be 3 days of national mourning. John Ray, ITV News.
Back here, a plan to reduce the NHS backlogs caused by COVID is failing, MPs have said in a damning report. The Public Accounts Committee said the plan was falling short, with cancer waiting times at their worst recorded level. And a mother and father who allowed their disabled daughter to become morbidly obese and die have been jailed. 16-year-old Kaylee Tipford was found dead at her home in Newtown in Wales in October 2020. Her conditions were described as unfit for any animal. Sarah Lloyd-Jones was sentenced to 6 years in prison and Alan Tipford for 7. Next tonight, more support will be available to victims of major disasters. Under new government plans, a panel of experts will help survivors and bereaved relatives. But the announcement has been met with claims it doesn't go far enough. Our North of England reporter Rachel Townsend explains.
I am profoundly sorry that this double injustice has been left uncorrected for so long.
As Prime Minister, I apologise for that failure.
Apology after apology. They come to mean little to bereaved families. The latest came from Justice Secretary Dominic Raab as he confirmed plans for an independent public advocate.
Speaker, we must learn the lessons of Hillsborough and we must make sure that they never happen again.
Hillsborough families remain far from convinced.
I saw nothing in the public advocate that was new to me, because I didn't say anything about a duty of candour, where the police have got to tell the truth.
The proposal includes experts offering help in the aftermath of disasters such as Hillsborough and the Grenfell fire. The trained advocates will signpost the bereaved and injured to vital financial, physical and mental health services. They'll provide regular updates during any inquests and inquiries, and they'll advocate on their behalf, allowing them to raise any concerns directly with the authorities involved. The former Bishop of Liverpool called for government action in a report published over 5 years ago.
There is concern among the Hillsborough families that this could replace a potential Hillsborough law. Do you feel that is a possibility?
I hope it's not a possibility, because the Hillsborough law and the emphasis upon a duty of candour lies right at the heart of our recommendations. What is clear from listening to the Grenfell families is that the lessons of Hillsborough have not yet been learned.
Mr Raab has offered to meet the 97 Hillsborough families, insisting he wants to give the bereaved a voice. But many believe their voices have fallen on deaf ears for decades. Rachel Townsend, ITV News.
There is more to come on the ITV Evening News, including Ed Sheeran opens up about his depression after his wife was diagnosed with a tumour while she was pregnant. And fit for a king, the Coronation chair getting a makeover ahead of the big day. We'll be back with that and lots more after the break. Welcome back. Police are expected to give an update in the next few minutes on their desperate hunt for a missing baby. The newborn's parents were arrested on Monday, but there was no sign of the child. Let's cross straight now to our correspondent Sejal Carrier, who's waiting for that news conference to start. Sejal, what's the latest?
Well, Lucrezia, as you said, we are expecting the police to give us what they are calling a significant update in the next few minutes. What I can tell you is that 48 hours after the couple were arrested, the baby is still missing, and police are growing anxious and have been growing anxious for the past 2 nights for the welfare of that baby. The detective leading the investigation gave us an update a little earlier today, and his language really reflected the seriousness of the situation. He said the police searches for the baby continue and that the police must consider that the baby has come to serious harm, and that detectives from the Met Specialist Crime Command are now leading the inquiries. The search operation to find the baby is huge, covering some 91 square miles across this part of Sussex, involving hundreds of police officers, and today they were joined by specialist search teams, all of whom were scouring a part of a parkland close to where Constance Martin and Mark Gordon were arrested 2 nights ago. They remain in custody, and the police say that they are asking for more time to question them. But police have been bracing themselves that this case will have a difficult outcome.
All right, so Joanne Lewis in Sussex, thank you. Ed Sheeran has revealed he spiralled through depression last year. The singer-songwriter said he'd been filled with dark thoughts after the death of his best friend and his wife's tumour diagnosis. Our entertainment reporter Rishi Davda joins us now. And Rishi, he's really been very candid about his comments today, hasn't he?
This is probably the most open we've ever heard Ed Sheeran be. He poured his heart out on Instagram in a post that coincided with the announcement of a new album called Subtract. And he said Subtract was a collection of acoustic songs that had been collating over 10 years, but he threw that all out the window given what was happening in his life in early 2022. He wrote, "Within the space of a month, my pregnant wife got told she had a tumour with no route to treatment until after the birth. My best friend Jamal, a brother to me, died suddenly, and I found myself standing in court defending my integrity and career as a songwriter." Well, Ed and his wife Cherry welcomed their second daughter last May, but Ed didn't say anything more about Cherry's health. Jamal Edwards, who helped launch Ed's career, died from a cardiac arrest after taking cocaine, according to a coroner. And the court case he referred to was a copyright trial over claims that he plagiarised the song Shape of You. Well, during that time, he says he spiralled through fear, depression and anxiety, but that writing this album, it came from the heart. It will be coming out in May, and it allowed him to express himself when he was at his lowest. He called it a trapdoor into his soul.
All right, Rishi, thank you. And finally, tonight, are you sitting comfortably? Because if you think your old furniture looks a little shabby around the edges, it's probably nothing compared to the Coronation chair. More than 700 years of history have left it needing a bit of TLC before its starring role when the King is crowned. Martha Fairley now on restoring the seat of power.
It has survived civil and world wars, a suffragette bombing and vandalism, and is one of the most rare and precious pieces of furniture in the world. But before the coronation of the King and Queen Consort in May, this ancient oaken chair is undergoing vital conservation work to preserve and clean it.
It would have originally have painted and gilded glasswork as well, so it would have looked like a metallic object. It's fitted with punchwork, which is small tiny dots that we use to create images. So there's birds, there's figures of saints and kings. It really is an exquisite example of the quality of craftsmanship that doesn't survive anymore.
The Coronation chair was commissioned by Edward I to house the Stone of Destiny, the ancient throne of Scotland's kings.
The climax of the ceremony has arrived, when the Archbishop gently sets this splendid emblem on the Queen's head.
They have been used together at every coronation of kings and queens at Westminster Abbey since. "70 years ago, a young Prince Charles watched as his mother was crowned on the coronation chair. In just over 9 weeks, he'll take his place as king before the high altar of Westminster Abbey. Here, in front of a congregation of around 2,000 people, the king will be crowned in a service to reflect the role of the monarch today and look towards the future. But the king will be seated on a chair that has been the centrepiece of coronations for more than 700 years. It's not always been held in such reverence. This chair is covered in graffiti left by schoolboys and visitors to the Abbey in the 18th and 19th centuries, including that of one P. Abbott, who claimed to have slept on it. Their names now ingrained on this chair, being prepared for its historic role. Martha Fairley, ITV News, Westminster Abbey.
And what a role indeed. And that is all from us and from me in this chair tonight. Do keep up with the latest on tonight's main stories and any developments. You can read more on the ITV or website, itv.com/news. The weather is up next. Then Maggie is here after the football. That's Man United's FA Cup clash with West Ham live in just a few minutes. But from me and all the Evening News team, good night.